I never thought I'd be the guy writing this story. Hell, I never thought I'd be the guy living it. But here I am, 3 months after what should have been the worst day of my life, and I'm actually smiling as I write this. Not because I'm cruel, but because sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of justice that's so perfect, you can't help but appreciate the artistry of it all. It started with a photograph. Isn't that how these things always begin? A single moment frozen in time that shatters everything you thought you knew about your life. I was stationed in Afghanistan, my second deployment in 3 years, counting down the days until I could come home to Sarah, my wife of 4 years, the woman who promised to wait for me, who sent me care packages filled with homemade cookies and letters that smelled like her perfume. The woman who told me every night on our video calls that she loved me, that she missed me, that she was counting down the same days I was. The photograph came from my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, sweet old lady who'd always looked out for us, who promised to keep an eye on the house while I was gone. She sent it in a message that made my blood turn to ice. "I'm so sorry, honey. I thought you should know." There they were, clear as day in the afternoon sunlight streaming through our kitchen window. Sarah, my Sarah, pressed up against the kitchen counter with someone's hands on her waist, someone's mouth on hers. But it wasn't just someone. It was Marcus, my best friend since high school, my best man at our wedding, the guy who'd helped me pick out Sarah's engagement ring, who'd been there through every milestone of our relationship. I stared at that photograph for what felt like hours, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped my phone. The mess hall buzzed with conversation around me, but I felt like I was underwater, like all the sound was reaching me from a great distance. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs and was slowly tightening them. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't process what I was seeing. Marcus had his deployment deferment, some bullshit about being essential personnel at the base back home. I'd been happy for him at the time, glad that at least one of us wouldn't have to leave everything behind. I'd even asked him to look after Sarah, to check on her, to make sure she was okay while I was gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. It burned like acid in my throat. I don't remember walking back to my bunk. I don't remember the next few hours at all, actually. My bunkmate Rodriguez told me later that I sat on my cot staring at my phone for 6 straight hours, not moving, not speaking, just staring. He said he'd never seen anyone look so broken. And coming from a guy who'd seen his share of combat, that was saying something. When I finally came back to myself, it was like waking up from a nightmare, except the nightmare was real and waiting for me on my phone screen. I must have looked at that photograph 100 times, searching for some explanation, some innocent reason why my wife was kissing my best friend in our kitchen. But there was nothing innocent about the way her fingers were tangled in his hair, nothing innocent about the way his hands were sliding up her back, nothing innocent about the way she was arching into him like she'd been dying for his touch. I wanted to call her. God, I wanted to call her and scream, to demand answers, to hear her voice stumble over lies and excuses. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the part of me that was already planning, already thinking 3 steps ahead like I'd been trained to do. Or maybe it was just the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down on my chest, making it impossible to do anything but lie there and hurt. Instead, I did what any rational person would do. I started investigating. It's amazing what you can discover when you're 6,000 miles away and have nothing but time and devastating motivation. I started with social media, scrolling through Sarah's posts from the past few months. On the surface, everything looked normal. Pictures of her at work, her yoga classes, girls' nights out. But once I knew what to look for, the signs were everywhere. Marcus liked every single one of her photos. Not unusual for a friend, but the timing was interesting. He was always the first to like them, usually within minutes of her posting. I went back further, cross-referencing his posts with hers. They were both at the same coffee shop on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks ago. Both posted pictures of the same sunset from what looked like the same location. Both happened to be at the same restaurant on a Friday night, though they'd posted the photos hours apart. But it was the comments that really told the story. Little inside jokes, references to conversations I wasn't part of, a familiarity that went beyond friendship. "You always know how to make me laugh," he'd written under a photo of her, making a silly face. "Thanks for listening last night." She'd replied to one of his posts about having a rough day at work. Last night, I'd been trying to call her that night, had left 3 voicemails because she wasn't answering. She'd texted me hours later saying she'd been asleep, that she was sorry she'd missed my calls. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, She was cheating on me with my best friend, and they were building a whole relationship right under my nose, using my absence as their opportunity. I found more photos. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, had been documenting everything without even realizing it. Marcus's car in our driveway at odd hours. The two of them walking together to the mailbox. Sarah wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. Something delicate and expensive that definitely wasn't my style. Marcus had good taste in jewelry. I remember that from when he'd helped me pick out Sarah's engagement ring. The engagement ring that was probably sitting on our dresser while she was with him. By the time I'd pieced together the full scope of their affair, I felt like I'd been hollowed out from the inside. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about the people I loved most, had been a lie. But underneath the pain and the betrayal, something else was growing. Something cold and calculating and absolutely furious. I wasn't just angry about the cheating. I was angry about the lies, about the way they'd made me complicit in my own betrayal. I was angry about the care packages I'd sent home, the ones that had probably been sitting on the counter while they were together in our bed. I was angry about the video calls where Sarah had looked me in the eye and told me she loved me, when she was probably planning to see Marcus as soon as we hung up. But most of all, I was angry about how stupid they thought I was. How they'd assumed that being deployed meant I was out of sight, out of mind, too far away to notice what was happening in my own home. They'd underestimated me, and that was going to be their downfall. I started making calls, not to Sarah, not to Marcus, but to people who could help me. My lawyer first, a guy named Tom who'd handled the legal work when we bought the house. Then my bank to understand our joint accounts and assets. Then a private investigator back home. Someone who could get me the kind of evidence I'd need for what was coming. The PI was expensive, but I had money. Deployment pay adds up when you're living in a tent and have nothing to spend it on. I'd been saving for a house upgrade, maybe a vacation when I got back. Now I had a different use for those funds. I need everything, I told him during our first call. Photos, videos, financial records, timeline of the affair, everything that proves what they've been doing. His name was Detective Ray Morrison, retired police who'd gone private. He had the kind of voice that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. How long you been deployed, son? 7 months. And you suspect this has been going on how long? Based on what I found? At least 4 months. Maybe longer. There was a pause on the line. I'll be honest with you, this kind of thing happens more than you'd think. Military marriages are tough. The question is, what do you want to do about it? What did I want to do about it? I wanted to burn their whole world down. I wanted them to feel the same shock and betrayal I was feeling. I wanted them to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't just destroy someone's life and expect to walk away clean. But I also wanted to be smart about it. I wanted to do this right. I want a divorce, I said, and I want to make sure she doesn't get half of everything just because she's been screwing my best friend in our bed. That's what I like to hear. Someone with a plan. Ray was thorough. Over the next few weeks, he sent me regular updates. Photos of Marcus's car in our driveway. Credit card receipts showing charges to restaurants and hotels. Even a recording of them together, laughing and kissing outside a movie theater like they were any other couple in love. Each piece of evidence felt like another nail in the coffin of my old life. But with each nail, I felt stronger, more focused. They thought they were getting away with something, but they were actually digging their own graves. The timeline Ray constructed was devastating. The affair had started almost as soon as I'd left for deployment. Within 2 weeks, Marcus was spending nights at the house. Within a month, they were going on dates, acting like a real couple. By the 3rd month, according to the financial records, Marcus had started paying for things. Groceries, utilities, even Sarah's car payment. He was playing house with my wife, in my house, with my things while I was overseas serving my country. But the most interesting discovery came in week 4 of Ray's investigation. Sarah had been to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a divorce attorney. She'd been planning to leave me, but she was smart enough to wait until I came home. That way, she could paint herself as the victim, the lonely military wife who'd found comfort in the arms of a friend while her husband was away. She was going to divorce me and take half of everything, including the house I'd bought before we were married, the savings I'd accumulated during my deployments, even half of my military pension. And she was going to do it while playing the victim, making me the bad guy who'd abandoned her for the military. The audacity of it took my breath away. But it also gave me something precious, leverage. See, in our state, adultery affects divorce proceedings. If I could prove she'd been unfaithful, it would impact alimony, asset division, everything. But more than that, it would give me the moral high ground. I wouldn't be the husband who'd chosen the military over his wife. I'd be the faithful husband who'd been betrayed while serving his country. The optics were perfect, but I didn't just want to win the divorce. I wanted them to understand what they'd done. I wanted the consequences to be public, immediate, and devastating. I wanted them to feel the same shock I'd felt when I saw that first photograph. That's when I started thinking about timing. Ray had discovered something else in his investigation. Marcus and Sarah weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future together. They'd been looking at apartments, talking about getting married when Sarah and I were divorced. They had a whole life mapped out, built on the foundation of their betrayal, but they were being careful. They weren't living together officially, weren't posting couple photos on social media, weren't doing anything that could be used against them in divorce proceedings. They were waiting for the right moment to go public. I decided to help them with that timing. The plan started forming slowly, like a puzzle coming together piece by piece. I couldn't just serve divorce papers at home. That would be private, contained. Sarah would have time to craft her story, to play the victim, to make me look like the bad guy. Marcus would disappear into the background, maybe even play the supportive friend who'd been there for her during a difficult time. No, I needed something public, something that would make it impossible for them to control the narrative, something that would expose their relationship for what it was, a betrayal that had been happening under everyone's noses. I needed to catch them in the act of being happy together, in front of people who mattered to them, people who would judge them, who would see them for what they really were. That's when Ray gave me the final piece of the puzzle. "They're talking about getting married," he said during one of our calls. "Not right away, but they're already planning. Looking at venues, talking about guest lists. Your wife's been telling people she's thinking about changing her name. She's still married to me," I said, my voice colder than I'd intended. "Yeah, well, she's not acting like it. But here's the interesting part. They're not waiting for your divorce to be final. They're planning to have some kind of ceremony, unofficial for now, but they want to celebrate their relationship. Make it public." My heart started pounding. When? Soon. Maybe within the next month or two. They're calling it an engagement party, but from what I've heard, it's going to be more like a wedding. They've even been talking about rings. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. "I need you to find out exactly when and where," I said, "and I need you to find out who's going to be there. You thinking about crashing the party? Something like that." The next few weeks were a blur of planning and preparation. I had to coordinate with my commanding officer to arrange emergency leave, which was easier than I'd expected. When you tell your CO that you've discovered your wife is having an affair and you need to handle divorce proceedings, they tend to be understanding. But I didn't tell him about the rest of the plan. Some things are better kept private. I also had to coordinate with Tom, my lawyer, to prepare the divorce papers. This was trickier because Tom is a cautious man, and what I was planning wasn't exactly conventional legal strategy. "You want to do what?" he asked when I outlined my plan. "I want to serve her divorce papers at their engagement party." That's not how we usually handle these things. "I'm not looking for usual, Tom. I'm looking for effective." There was a long pause on the line. "Look, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But serving papers at a party in front of witnesses is going to look vindictive. It might backfire. Let me worry about how it looks. Can you have the papers ready?" Another pause. "The papers will be ready. But are you sure you want to do this? Once you serve them, there's no going back. And the way you're planning to do it is Suriname. It's going to be messy. Tom, they made it messy when they decided to have an affair. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." The hardest part was waiting. I had all the pieces in place, but I had to wait for them to set the date for their party. Every day felt like a year. Every video call with Sarah was torture. Watching her lie to my face while I knew exactly what she was doing as soon as we hung up. But I kept up the act. I told her I loved her. I asked about her day. I pretended to believe her stories about girls' nights and yoga classes and quiet evenings at home. I was becoming as good a liar as she was. Meanwhile, Ray was feeding me intelligence about their plans. The party was going to be at Marcus's parents' house, a big backyard affair with about 50 people. Everyone from our friend group would be there, plus family members, co-workers, people who'd known us as a couple, people who'd been to our wedding, who'd congratulated us on our marriage, who'd told me how lucky I was to have found Sarah. The guest list was particularly interesting. Marcus's parents loved Sarah, had always treated her like a daughter. They'd been at our wedding, had hugged me and told me how happy they were to welcome Sarah into their family. Now they were hosting a party to celebrate their son's relationship with their new daughter-in-law's husband's wife. The irony was exquisite, but the most beautiful part was the timing. They'd scheduled their party for a Saturday afternoon, a casual barbecue affair where they could announce their engagement and celebrate their love. They'd even hired a photographer to capture the moment, wanting to document their happiness for posterity. They were going to get their documentation, all right, just not the kind they were expecting. I arranged my flight home to arrive Friday night. I didn't tell Sarah I was coming early. As far as she knew, I wasn't due back for another 2 weeks. I wanted to maintain the element of surprise. I also didn't tell Marcus I was coming home. He thought he had more time to figure out how to handle the situation, more time to plan his exit strategy. But I wasn't going to give him that luxury. The flight home was the longest 12 hours of my life. I sat in that cramped airline seat, staring out the window at the clouds below, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 4 years of marriage, 6 years of friendship with Marcus. All of it crumbling because two people couldn't keep their hands off each other while I was serving my country. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was focused. I was determined. I was ready to reclaim my life and make sure they understood the consequences of their choices. When I landed at the airport, I didn't go home. I went to a hotel where Ray was waiting for me with a final briefing and the divorce papers Tom had prepared. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect. "You sure about this?" Ray asked as he handed me the manila envelope. "Once you do this, it's going to be the nuclear option. There's no taking it back." I looked at the envelope, thinking about everything it represented. The end of my marriage, the end of my friendship with Marcus, the end of the life I thought I was building, but also the beginning of something new, something honest, something that wasn't built on lies and betrayal. "I'm sure," I said, "they made their choice. Now they get to live with the consequences." Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for a backyard party. Perfect weather for a reckoning. I drove to Marcus's parents' house, parking a block away where I could watch the preparations. People were arriving, carrying covered dishes and bottles of wine, laughing and talking as they walked up the driveway. I recognized most of them. Friends from college, co-workers, family members. People who thought they were coming to celebrate love, who had no idea they were about to witness the destruction of everything they thought they knew about the couple they were honoring. Sarah arrived at noon, looking beautiful in a yellow sundress I'd never seen before. She was carrying a bouquet of flowers, looking radiant and happy in a way that made my chest ache with memory and fury. She hugged Marcus's mother at the door, laughing at something the older woman said, playing the part of the happy bride-to-be. Marcus appeared a few minutes later, wearing a button-down shirt and khakis, looking every inch the successful young man ready to start his new life. He kissed Sarah hello, right there in front of everyone, and the assembled crowd cheered and applauded. They were really doing this. They were celebrating their affair in front of all our friends and family, acting like their relationship was something to be proud of instead of something built on lies and betrayal. I waited until about 1 o'clock when the party was in full swing. I could see them through the backyard gate, Sarah and Marcus holding hands, accepting congratulations, posing for photos. The photographer was capturing every moment, every smile, every loving glance. Perfect. I got out of my car and walked to the front door, my heart pounding with anticipation and adrenaline. I was still in my civilian clothes, having changed out of my uniform at the hotel. I wanted to look like a regular person, not a soldier. I wanted this to be about what they'd done, not about my military service. Marcus's mother answered the door, her face lighting up with surprise and delight when she saw me. "Oh my goodness, what are you doing here? Sarah didn't tell us you were coming home early." I wanted to surprise her. I said, which was technically true. "Is she here?" "She's out back with Marcus. They're having their engagement party." "Isn't that wonderful?" The word engagement hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "Engagement party? Oh, you know how young people are these days. They wanted to celebrate their relationship, make it official. They're so happy together." Sarah's been glowing for weeks. "I'll bet she has," I thought. Out loud I said, "That's great. I can't wait to congratulate them." She led me through the house, chattering about the party, about how beautiful Sarah looked, about how lucky Marcus was to have found such a wonderful woman. Every word was another knife in the chest, but I kept walking, kept smiling, kept my hand steady on the envelope in my jacket pocket. We stepped out onto the patio, and the backyard opened up before me like a scene from a movie. Dozens of people scattered across the lawn, eating and drinking and laughing. Balloons tied to tables, flowers everywhere, a banner stretched between two trees that read, "Congratulations, Sarah and Marcus." And there they were, In the center of it all, accepting congratulations from a group of friends. Sarah was radiant, Marcus was beaming, and everyone around them was celebrating their love story. Nobody had noticed me yet. I stood in the doorway for a moment, taking it all in, memorizing every detail. This was the moment everything changed. The moment the truth came out. The moment they realized their carefully constructed fantasy was about to come crashing down. I started walking across the lawn, weaving between groups of people, heading straight for the happy couple. A few people noticed me and did double takes, recognizing me but confused about why I was there. I saw the confusion spread across their faces, the whispered conversations, the pointing. Sarah noticed the commotion first. She turned toward the disturbance, and when she saw me, her face went white. The champagne glass in her hand slipped from her fingers and shattered on the concrete patio. Marcus turned next, following her gaze, and when he saw me, his expression went from confusion to horror in the space of a heartbeat. He actually took a step back, like he was preparing to run. But there was nowhere to run. We were in the middle of a crowded party, surrounded by friends and family, with nowhere to hide from what was coming. I walked up to them, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The conversations around us had stopped. People were staring, sensing drama but not understanding what was happening. "Hello, Sarah," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Marcus." Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No sound came out. Marcus looked like he might vomit. "Surprise?" I continued. "I got leave early. Thought I'd come home and see what my wife was up to." The word wife hung in the air like a bomb. I could see the realization dawning on the faces around us. These people had been celebrating Sarah and Marcus's engagement, but Sarah was married. To me, the implications were starting to sink in. I can explain," Sarah finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can you?" I asked. "Because I'd love to hear how you explain this." I gestured around the party, at the decorations, at the banner, at the engagement ring on her finger that I was just now noticing. "When did you get engaged, Sarah?" "Because last I checked, you were still married to me." The silence was deafening. 50 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Sarah was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Please," she whispered. "Not here. Not like this." "Not like what?" I asked. "Not in front of all our friends? Not in front of your family? Not in front of the people who came to our wedding 4 years ago?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the manila envelope. "I have something for you, Sarah." A little surprise of my own. Her eyes went wide when she saw the envelope. She knew what it was before I even opened it. "These are divorce papers," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, citing adultery as grounds for dissolution of marriage. "They're very detailed, actually." My private investigator was very thorough. I pulled out the papers and held them up for everyone to see. There are photos, financial records, a complete timeline of your affair. Everything I need to prove that you've been cheating on me with my best friend while I was deployed, serving my country. The gasps from the crowd were audible. I could see phones coming out, people starting to record. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. 4 months, I continued. You've been having an affair for 4 months. You've been planning to leave me, to take half of everything I own, and then marry the man you've been cheating with. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Sarah was sobbing now, and Marcus was standing frozen beside her, saying nothing. Not defending her, not defending himself, just standing there like a deer in headlights. "You know what the funny part is?" I said, looking directly at Marcus. "I asked you to look after her while I was gone. I asked my best friend to take care of my wife. And you did, didn't you? You took very good care of her." "Man, it wasn't like that." Marcus finally found his voice. "It just happened. We didn't plan it." "You didn't plan it?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You didn't plan the hotel visits? The romantic dinners? The apartment you've been looking at together? The engagement ring? What part of this wasn't planned?" I turned back to Sarah, who was still crying. "You've been to a lawyer, haven't you? You've been planning to divorce me. You were just waiting for the right moment, waiting for me to come home so you could play the victim. The lonely military wife who found comfort in the arms of a friend." "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Then what was it like?" I asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living a double life for months. It looks like you've been lying to me every single day, telling me you loved me, telling me you missed me, while you were building a whole relationship with another man." I held out the divorce papers. "Congratulations on your engagement. Consider this my wedding gift. She took the papers with shaking hands, and I could see her reading the first page, seeing the evidence laid out in black and white. Photos of her and Marcus together, financial records showing their joint expenses, witness statements from neighbors who'd seen them together. You're being served with divorce papers, Sarah. In front of all these people, at your engagement party, because I wanted everyone to know the truth. I wanted them to understand what kind of person celebrates an engagement while still married to someone else. The crowd was buzzing now, people talking in hushed tones, pointing, staring. I could see the judgment in their eyes, the disapproval, the shock. This wasn't the love story they'd thought they were celebrating. I'm keeping the house. I continued. I'm keeping my savings, my pension, everything I earned while you were cheating on me. The adultery clause in our state means you get nothing. No alimony, no asset division, nothing. Just the knowledge that you destroyed our marriage for someone who was supposed to be my friend. I looked at Marcus one last time. And you. You were my best man. You helped me pick out her engagement ring. You were there when I proposed. You celebrated our wedding. And this is how you repay that friendship? Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. Don't say anything. There's nothing you can say that will make this better. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. I turned to address the crowd. All these people who'd come to celebrate what they thought was a love story. I'm sorry your party got ruined, I said, but I thought you all deserved to know the truth. You came here to celebrate an engagement, but what you're really celebrating is adultery. Sarah is still married to me. She's been cheating on me for months while I was deployed. This isn't a love story. It's a betrayal. I started walking back toward the house, leaving Sarah standing there with the divorce papers in her hands, leaving Marcus standing there with his mouth hanging open, leaving the entire party in stunned silence. But I wasn't quite done. I turned back one more time. Oh, and Sarah, I'm changing the locks on the house. Your stuff will be on the front porch. You can pick it up tomorrow. Then I walked away, leaving them to deal with the aftermath of their choices, leaving them to face the judgment of all the people who'd thought they were celebrating love, but had instead witnessed the public destruction of a marriage built on lies. I could hear the chaos erupting behind me as I walked through the house, voices raised in shock and outrage, people demanding explanations, the sound of Sarah crying and Marcus trying to manage the situation. But I didn't look back. I'd said what I needed to say, done what I needed to do. The nuclear option, Ray had called it. He was right. I'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of their perfect life, and the fallout was going to be devastating. But as I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The weight of carrying their secret, of pretending I didn't know what they were doing, was finally lifted. The truth was out. Everyone knew. There was no going back. I got in my car and drove away, leaving them to deal with the consequences of their choices. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts from people who'd been at the party, people who wanted to know what was happening, people who wanted to hear my side of the story. But I didn't answer. I had nothing more to say. The divorce papers said everything that needed to be said. The evidence spoke for itself. The truth was finally out, and now they would have to live with it. I drove to a bar across town, ordered a whiskey, and sat there alone, thinking about everything that had just happened. 4 years of marriage gone. 6 years of friendship destroyed. An entire life I'd thought I was building, revealed to be built on lies. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was free. Free from the lies, free from the betrayal, free from the weight of carrying their secret. They'd thought they were clever, thought they were getting away with something. But they'd underestimated me, and now they were paying the price. The bartender, a grizzled old man who'd probably seen his share of heartbreak, looked at me with knowing eyes. "Rough day?" he asked. "Actually," I said, raising my glass, "it's been a pretty good day." And for the first time in months, I meant it. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, a cleansing burn. The burn of truth and justice and consequences finally catching up with people who thought they were untouchable. I sat there for a long time, watching the news coverage of my story spread across social media. Someone had recorded the whole thing, and it was already going viral. "Military husband serves wife divorce papers at her engagement party" was trending on Twitter. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. People outraged on my behalf, people calling Sarah and Marcus terrible names. I didn't feel good about the public humiliation exactly, but I felt satisfied that the truth was out, that people knew what had really happened, that Sarah and Marcus couldn't control the narrative anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray. "Saw the news. Hope you're okay." That took balls. Then another from Tom. "Jesus Christ, you actually did it. Call me tomorrow. We need to talk about next steps." And dozens more from friends, family, people I hadn't heard from in years. All of them supportive, all of them outraged on my behalf, all of them telling me I'd done the right thing. Maybe I had, maybe I hadn't, but I'd done what felt right in the moment, and I couldn't take it back now, even if I wanted to. I finished my drink and drove to the hotel, where I'd be staying until I figured out my next move. The house was legally mine, but I wasn't ready to go back there yet. Too many memories, too many reminders of the life I thought I was building. Tomorrow I'd start picking up the pieces. Tomorrow I'd figure out how to move forward. Tomorrow I'd begin the process of rebuilding my life from the ground up. But tonight I was just going to sit in this hotel room and appreciate the fact that the truth was finally out. That Sarah and Marcus were no longer getting away with their betrayal. That consequences had finally caught up with them. Justice, it turned out, was a dish best served publicly, in front of all the people who'd thought they were celebrating love, but had instead witnessed the destruction of a marriage built on lies. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has perfect timing. The next morning, I woke up to 247 missed calls and over 800 text messages. My phone had been buzzing all night like an angry wasp, but I'd turned it off around midnight and slept the deepest sleep I'd had in months. There's something to be said for the peace that comes with brutal honesty. No more secrets to carry, no more lies to maintain, no more pretending everything was fine when my world was falling apart. I turned my phone back on and watched the notifications flood in. The video had gone viral overnight. Someone had posted it on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. The headlines were brutal. Cheating wife gets divorce papers at engagement party. Military husband's epic revenge. This is what happens when you cheat on a deployed soldier. The comments were even worse, at least for Sarah and Marcus. I scrolled through them, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and something that might have been guilt. People were calling Sarah every name in the book, calling Marcus a backstabbing coward, calling them both homewreckers and worse. The internet had done what the internet does best. It had taken my personal tragedy and turned it into a public execution. But then I saw Sarah's social media accounts. She'd deleted everything. Every photo, every post, every trace of her online presence was gone. Marcus had done the same. They'd gone completely dark, probably hiding from the tsunami of judgment that was crashing down on them. Good. Let them hide. Let them feel what it's like to have their world turned upside down overnight. Let them experience the shock and disorientation that comes with having everything you thought you knew about your life suddenly revealed to be a lie. My phone rang. "Tom, my lawyer." "You're famous," he said without preamble. And I mean that in the worst possible way. "My office has been flooded with calls from reporters wanting to know if you're planning to sue for defamation, if you're going to write a book, if you're available for interviews. This thing has gotten huge." "I don't want to talk to reporters," I said. "I just want to get divorced and move on with my life." "Well, the good news is that your little stunt yesterday has made our job a lot easier." Sarah's lawyer called me at 7 this morning. She wants to settle out of court, no contest, no demands for alimony or asset division. She's willing to sign whatever we put in front of her if we can keep this quiet going forward. I felt a surge of dark satisfaction. She's scared. Terrified is more like it. Her lawyer says she's been crying for 12 hours straight and can't leave her apartment because there are reporters camping outside. Apparently someone doxed her, and she's been getting death threats from internet vigilantes who think she's the devil incarnate. That gave me pause. Death threats seemed excessive, even for what she'd done to me. Is she safe? She's fine. The police are keeping an eye on her place. But her lawyer made it very clear that she wants this to go away as quickly and quietly as possible. She's offering to waive all claims to marital assets, she'll pay for the divorce proceedings, and she's willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement if you'll agree not to make any more public statements about the affair. What about Marcus? What about him? He's not married to you. He's not part of the divorce proceedings. Though from what I hear, he's having his own problems. Someone found his work address and started calling his boss. Apparently, adultery with a military spouse doesn't look good when you work for a defense contractor. I'd forgotten about that. Marcus worked for a company that did business with the military. Sleeping with a deployed soldier's wife was exactly the kind of scandal that could end a career in that field. The irony was perfect. His affair was going to cost him the job that had kept him stateside while I was deployed. "I'll think about the settlement," I said, "but I want to see the terms first. And I want to make sure she understands that this doesn't make us even. She destroyed 4 years of my life. A quick divorce doesn't fix that." I understand your anger, Tom said, but from a legal standpoint, this is the best outcome we could hope for. She's basically handing you everything you wanted on a silver platter. Don't let your emotions torpedo a good settlement. He was right, of course. Logically, I should take the deal, get my divorce, and move on. But the part of me that wanted justice, that wanted them to really pay for what they'd done, wasn't satisfied with a quiet settlement. I wanted them to face consequences, real consequences, not just embarrassment and bad press. After I hung up with Tom, I called Ray to check in. "Holy shit," he said when he picked up. "You actually did it. You served her divorce papers at her engagement party. That's the most balls-out thing I've ever seen." How are they handling it? About as well as you'd expect. Sarah's been holed up in her apartment since yesterday. Marcus is staying with his parents, but apparently they're not too happy with him either. Word is his mother is furious, says he's brought shame on the family name. Good. There's more. Someone leaked Marcus's employee file to the press. Turns out he's been having affairs for years, not just with your wife. His ex-girlfriend from college came forward with her own story. Says he cheated on her with a married woman. Guy's got a pattern. That hit me like a physical blow. Sarah wasn't his first affair. She wasn't special, wasn't the love of his life that he'd been willing to risk everything for. She was just another notch on his bedpost, another married woman he'd seduced while her husband was away. The realization made me feel sick and furious at the same time. There's something else, Ray continued. I did some digging into their finances like you asked. You're going to want to sit down for this. What did you find? Marcus has been paying for everything. Not just dates and hotels, but everything. Sarah's car payment, her credit cards, her gym membership, even her health insurance. He's been essentially supporting her for the past 3 months. Why would he do that? Because she quit her job in March. She's been unemployed for 4 months, living off Marcus's money while telling you she was working. Every time you asked about her job on those video calls, she was lying. The hits just kept coming. She'd quit her job without telling me. Had been living off another man's money while I was deployed. Earning combat pay to support the wife I thought was working to support herself. The depth of the deception was staggering. There's more, Ray said. Dashun, they've been looking for a house. Not an apartment, a house. Marcus put in an offer on a place in Riverside last month. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, big backyard. He was planning to move her in as soon as your divorce was final. Jesus, they had their whole life planned out. Marriage, house, kids, everything. Sarah's been telling people she wants to start a family soon. With Marcus. Kids. She'd been planning to have kids with Marcus while she was still married to me. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I couldn't even process it. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete replacement of her life with me, a wholesale substitution of Marcus for me in every aspect of her existence. I need to see everything, I said. Every piece of evidence you've collected. I want to know the full scope of what they were planning. You sure? Some of this stuff is pretty hard to look at. I'm sure. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Ray's office, going through boxes of evidence. Photos, financial records, text messages, emails, even video surveillance from the hotels they'd been visiting. The scope of their betrayal was breathtaking. They'd been living as a married couple for months, making plans for their future together, spending my money and his money to build a life that was supposed to replace the one I thought I had. The text messages were the worst. Intimate conversations about their feelings for each other, their plans for the future, their excitement about being together. But mixed in with the love notes were cruel jokes about me, about how clueless I was, about how easy it was to fool me while I was deployed. He's so trusting. Sarah had texted Marcus in April. He actually believes I'm working late when I'm with you. Sometimes I feel bad about lying to him, but then I remember how much happier I am with you. Marcus had responded, don't feel bad. He chose the military over you. I chose you over everything else. That's the difference between us. Another exchange from May. Sarah, I can't wait until this is all over and we can be together officially. I'm so tired of pretending to be his wife when I want to be yours. Marcus, soon, baby. Once he's back and we can handle the divorce, we'll have our whole lives together. No more sneaking around, no more lying. Just us. Sarah, I love you so much. You're everything he never was. Marcus, I love you too. We're going to be so happy together. Reading those messages felt like being stabbed repeatedly in the chest, not just because of what they revealed about their relationship, but because of how easily they dismissed me, how little my feelings had mattered to them. I wasn't a person to them. I was just an obstacle to their happiness, something to be managed and deceived until they could dispose of me properly. But the financial records were almost worse. Marcus had been paying for everything: her car, her credit cards, her phone bill, her groceries, her clothes, her entertainment, everything. She'd been living like a kept woman while telling me she was working, while accepting care packages from me, while letting me believe I was supporting us both with my deployment pay. The house they'd been looking at was in a good neighborhood, the kind of place Sarah and I had talked about buying someday when we had more money saved up. They'd put down earnest money, had been pre-approved for a mortgage, had even been looking at furniture. They'd been planning to move in together as soon as my divorce was final, to start their married life in a house bought with his money and built on the foundation of their betrayal. I want copies of everything, I told Ray. Every photo, every document, every text message. I want it all. What are you planning to do with it? I don't know yet, but I want to have it just in case. The truth was, I was struggling with what to do next. The logical part of me knew I should take Tom's advice, accept Sarah's settlement offer, and move on with my life. The divorce would be final in a few months, I'd keep all my assets, and I'd be free to start over. Justice had been served in a way. They'd been publicly humiliated, their reputations were destroyed, and they were facing real consequences for their actions. But the emotional part of me, the part that had been betrayed and lied to and made to feel like a fool, wanted more. I wanted them to understand the full cost of what they'd done. I wanted them to feel the same sense of loss and betrayal that I'd felt when I saw that first photograph. I wanted them to know what it felt like to have their world turned upside down overnight. The problem was, I'd already played my biggest card. The public humiliation at the engagement party had been my nuclear option, and I'd used it. What else could I do? They were already social pariahs, already facing professional consequences, already dealing with the collapse of their carefully constructed fantasy. What more could I take from them? That's when I remembered something Ray had mentioned. Marcus was looking for a new job. His current employer had put him on administrative leave pending an investigation into his conduct, and it was only a matter of time before they fired him. He'd been interviewing with other companies trying to find a position that would let him support Sarah and their planned life together. I called Ray back. "Those companies Marcus has been interviewing with," I said. "Do you have a list?" "Yeah, I've got it." "Why?" "I want to make sure they know who they're potentially hiring." There was a pause on the line. That's pretty ruthless. He destroyed my marriage and my friendship. He made me complicit in my own betrayal. He called me trusting like it was a character flaw. I think his potential employers should know what kind of person they're dealing with. I can't officially help you with that, but I can't stop you from exercising your right to free speech either. Send me the list. Over the next few days, I crafted a carefully worded email. Nothing libelous, nothing that could get me in legal trouble, just a factual account of Marcus's affair with my wife while I was deployed. I included some of the evidence: the photographs, the financial records showing he'd been supporting another man's wife, the text messages where they joked about how easy it was to deceive me. I sent it to every company on Ray's list, along with a note explaining that I felt they should know about the character of the person they were considering hiring. The response was immediate. 2 companies called me directly to thank me for the information. One HR manager told me they'd been impressed with Marcus's qualifications, but were concerned about his character after receiving my email. Another said they'd already decided not to hire him, but my email confirmed they'd made the right choice. Within a week, Marcus had been turned down by every company he'd interviewed with. Word was spreading through the industry that he was trouble, that he couldn't be trusted, that hiring him would be a liability. His career in defense contracting was effectively over. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt like justice had been served, but instead I felt empty, like I'd won a battle but lost something important in the process. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who took pleasure in other people's pain, someone who spent his time plotting revenge instead of building a future. That's when I got a call from an unexpected source, Marcus's mother. "I need to speak with you," she said. Her voice was tired, defeated. "Please, just 5 minutes." We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where we could talk without causing a scene. She looked older than I remembered, worn down by the stress of the past week. Her son's scandal had become her scandal, and she was paying the price for his choices. "I want to apologize," she said as soon as we sat down, "for what Marcus did, for what they both did. It's unforgivable. Mrs. Patterson, You don't need to apologize for your son's actions. Yes, I do. I raised him to be better than this. I raised him to be loyal, to be honest, to be a good friend. And he failed at all of those things. She paused, gathering herself. I want you to know that his father and I are horrified by what he's done. We've told him he's not welcome in our house until he makes this right. What do you mean, makes it right? He needs to face the consequences of his actions. He needs to apologize to you publicly and mean it. He needs to understand that what he did was wrong, that it wasn't just some romantic mistake, but a betrayal of everything we taught him about loyalty and friendship. I looked at this woman who had welcomed Sarah into her family, who had been planning to celebrate her son's engagement to my wife, who was now sitting across from me asking for forgiveness on behalf of a grown man who couldn't face the consequences of his own actions. Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate you coming here. I really do. But this isn't something that can be fixed with an apology. Your son destroyed my marriage and my friendship. He made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. An apology doesn't undo that. I know, she said, tears in her eyes. I know it doesn't fix anything, but he's my son, and I love him, and I can't stand to see him destroy his life over a mistake. This wasn't a mistake, I said, perhaps more harshly than I intended. A mistake is forgetting to call on someone's birthday. A mistake is being late to dinner. This was a deliberate choice, made over and over again for months. This was a systematic betrayal of everything I thought our friendship meant. She nodded, wiping her eyes. You're right, it was. And I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to consider that he's paying for what he did. And maybe that's enough. Is it enough? I asked. Is he really paying for what he did? Or is he just dealing with the consequences of getting caught? The question hung in the air between us. After a long pause, she said, I think you should talk to him. Not to forgive him, not to make peace, but to let him tell you how sorry he is. He's been carrying this guilt for months, even before you found out. He knows what he did was wrong. If he knew it was wrong, why didn't he stop? Because he's weak, she said simply. Because he fell in love with someone he couldn't have and made terrible choices because of it. Because he's human and flawed and stupid. I wanted to argue with her, to tell her that being human and flawed didn't excuse what he'd done. But something in her voice, some combination of pain and love and disappointment, stopped me. She was a mother watching her son destroy his life, and she was asking me for mercy. I'll think about it, I said finally, but I can't promise anything. That's all I can ask for. She left me sitting there in the coffee shop, staring into my cup and thinking about forgiveness and revenge and the cost of holding on to anger. I'd spent so much energy over the past week destroying them, making sure they faced consequences for their actions, that I'd forgotten to think about what I wanted my life to look like going forward. Did I want to be the guy who spent his time plotting elaborate revenge schemes? Did I want to be known as the soldier who publicly humiliated his cheating wife? Did I want my story to be defined by their betrayal and my response to it? Or did I want to be something more than that? I thought about Mrs. Patterson's words. He's been carrying this guilt for months, even before you found out. If that was true, if Marcus had been feeling guilty about the affair, then why had he continued? Why had he been planning a future with Sarah? Why had he been joking about my trustfulness in their text messages? The answer came to me slowly, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. He'd been feeling guilty because he'd known it was wrong, but he'd been too weak to stop. He'd been caught between his guilt and his desire, between his loyalty to me and his love for Sarah, and he'd chosen the easy path. He'd chosen to tell himself that what he was doing was justified, that I'd chosen the military over Sarah, that he was just giving her what she needed. It was a coward's logic, but it was logic nonetheless. He'd convinced himself that his betrayal was actually a rescue, that he was saving Sarah from a marriage to a man who was never around. He'd rationalized his way into believing that what he was doing was right, or at least not wrong enough to stop. That realization should have made me angrier, should have made me want to destroy him even more completely. But instead, it made me feel tired. Tired of carrying this anger, tired of plotting revenge, tired of being defined by what they'd done to me instead of what I was going to do with my life. I made a decision sitting in that coffee shop. I was going to take Tom's advice. I was going to accept Sarah's settlement offer, finalize the divorce, and move on with my life. I was going to stop trying to destroy them and start trying to rebuild myself. But first, I was going to do something that felt right, not because it would hurt them, but because it would help me. I called Marcus. We need to talk, I said when he answered. I don't think that's a good idea, he said. His voice was shaky, uncertain. I'm not calling to fight with you. I'm calling because I need to understand something. Can you meet me somewhere? Somewhere public? There was a long pause. Okay, where? We met at a park near his parents' house, sitting on opposite ends of a picnic table, like we were negotiating a prisoner exchange. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, like he hadn't slept in days. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. I want to know when it started, I said without preamble. Not the affair, but the feelings. When did you start having feelings for my wife? He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. Remember when you got deployed the first time? 3 years ago? I nodded. You asked me to check on her, to make sure she was okay. And I did. I'd stop by the house, we'd talk. Sometimes we'd grab dinner or see a movie. Just as friends, nothing inappropriate. But somewhere along the way, I started looking forward to those visits more than I should have. So you've been in love with her for 3 years? I don't know if it was love back then, but it was something. Something I shouldn't have felt for my best friend's wife. He looked up at me. I never acted on it. Not during that first deployment. I knew it was wrong, and I kept my distance after you got back. But this deployment was different. This deployment was different. He agreed. You asked me to look after her again, and I should have said no. I should have known I couldn't trust myself around her. But I said yes because I wanted to spend time with her, and I told myself it was just being a good friend. When did it become physical? About 6 weeks after you left. We'd been spending time together, talking about her loneliness, her fears about your deployment. She was crying one night, talking about how hard it was to be alone. And I kissed her. She kissed me back, and everything changed. And you didn't think to stop? To step back and think about what you were doing? I should have. I know I should have. But I was already in too deep. I'd been thinking about her for years, and suddenly she was kissing me back, telling me she had feelings for me too. It felt like fate, like we were meant to be together. While she was married to me. While she was married to you, he admitted. I told myself that you'd chosen the military over her, that you were never around, that she deserved someone who would put her first. I told myself a lot of things to justify what I was doing. And the engagement party? The house you were buying? The plans for marriage and kids? That was all just, what? A moment of weakness that got out of hand? He winced. Number Wayne. That was me trying to build a life with her. That was me believing that what we had was real, that it was worth destroying everything else for. I was wrong. I was so fucking wrong. You were wrong, I agreed. But it wasn't just about being wrong. You were my best friend. You were supposed to have my back, not stab me in it. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I regret every day of the past 4 months. I regret falling in love with her. I regret acting on it. I regret lying to you. I regret everything. But you don't regret loving her. He was quiet for a long moment. Number 1, sir, Yariti Mungwan. I don't regret loving her. I regret how I handled it, but I can't regret the feelings themselves. They were real, even if what I did about them was wrong. Are you still in love with her? Yes, but it doesn't matter anymore. She won't even talk to me. She blames me for everything that happened, says I ruined her life by letting you find out. She's not wrong. I did ruin her life. I ruined both of our lives. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I can't get a job in my field. I can't stay in this town. I can't face the people who know what I did. I'll probably move somewhere else, start over, try to rebuild my life. But I'll never forgive myself for what I did to you. And I'll never forgive myself for losing the best friend I ever had. We sat in silence for a while, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I'd gotten what I came for, an understanding of how this had happened, a confession of guilt, an acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. You know what the worst part is? I said finally. What? I can understand it. I can understand falling in love with her, even when you knew it was wrong. I can understand being weak, being tempted, even giving into temptation. What I can't understand is how you lived with yourself for 4 months, looking me in the eye during video calls, accepting my gratitude for taking care of her, knowing what you were really doing. I hated myself every day, he said. Every time you thanked me for looking after her, every time you talked about coming home to her, every time you said you were glad she had a friend like me to lean on. I hated myself for betraying you, but I couldn't stop. I was in too deep. And now I have to live with what I've done. I have to accept that I destroyed the most important friendship in my life for a relationship that was built on lies and betrayal. I have to accept that I'm not the man I thought I was, that I'm capable of doing terrible things to people I love. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in months. I know. I should have been honest from the beginning. I should have told you how I felt about her instead of acting on it behind your back. I should have been a better friend, a better man. But I wasn't, and now I have to live with that. I looked at him, this man who had been my best friend for 6 years, who had been the best man at my wedding, who had helped me through every major crisis in my adult life. He was still the same person physically, but everything else had changed. The friendship we'd had was gone, killed by his betrayal and my need for revenge. I'm going to accept Sarah's settlement offer, I said. I'm going to finalize the divorce and move on with my life. I'm not going to pursue any more revenge against you or her. Thank you, he said, relief evident in his voice. Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. I don't want to be the guy who spends his life plotting revenge. I want to be someone better than that. You are someone better than that. You always were. Yeah, well, the past week has made me question that, but I'm going to try to be better going forward. I stood up to leave, but he stopped me. Can I ask you something? What? Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Not now, but someday? I thought about it for a long moment. I honestly don't know. Right now, I can't even imagine forgiving you. But maybe someday, when this doesn't hurt so much, when I've built a new life for myself, maybe I'll be able to let go of the anger. But forgiveness isn't the same as friendship. Even if I forgive you someday, we'll never be friends again. I understand. Couldn't. Yeah, good. Because I need you to understand that what you did didn't just end my marriage. It ended our friendship too. You can't have Sarah and expect to keep me as a friend. You can't betray someone and expect them to just get over it. I know. I've lost everything. No, you haven't. You've lost me, and you've lost your reputation, and you've lost your job. But you still have your life, and you still have the opportunity to learn from this and become a better person. Don't waste that opportunity. I walked away from him then, leaving him sitting at that picnic table in the park where we'd played as kids, where we'd planned our futures, where we'd promised to always be there for each other. That version of our friendship was over, killed by his choices and my need for justice. But as I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but peace. The crushing weight of anger and betrayal was finally lifting, replaced by something that felt like acceptance. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened next. I called Tom on my way back to the hotel. I'll take Sarah's settlement offer, I said. All of it. I want this over with. Are you sure? This is a big decision. I'm sure. I want to finalize the divorce as quickly as possible and move on with my life. I'll draw up the papers. We can have this wrapped up in a few weeks. Good name, good. And Tom, I want to include a clause that prevents either of us from making public statements about the divorce or the affair. I don't want this to follow me for the rest of my life. I can do that. Sarah's lawyer will probably be thrilled. She wants this to go away even more than you do. 3 weeks later, I was officially divorced. The papers were signed, the assets were divided in my favor, and my marriage to Sarah was legally over. She'd signed everything without contest, waiving her rights to alimony and marital assets, accepting responsibility for the affair, agreeing to the non-disclosure clause. It was the cleanest, quickest divorce Tom had ever handled. I never saw Sarah again. She moved in with her sister in another state, leaving behind her life in our town, her job prospects, her social circle, everything. The last I heard, she was working as a waitress and living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Marcus left town too, eventually finding work in construction in another state. Not the career he'd planned, but honest work that let him support himself without relying on his reputation or his connections. I heard through mutual friends that he'd sworn off dating, that he was focused on rebuilding his character and learning to live with what he'd done. I could have felt satisfied about their downfall, about the way they'd lost everything they'd thought they were building together. But I didn't. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd won a war but lost something important in the process. That's when I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Williams was a woman in her 50s who specialized in military families and trauma. She didn't judge me for what I'd done, didn't tell me I was wrong to seek revenge, didn't try to minimize my pain. Instead, she helped me understand why I'd felt the need to destroy them so completely. You felt powerless, she said during one of our sessions. You were thousands of miles away, unable to confront them directly, unable to stop what was happening. The public humiliation at the party was your way of reclaiming power, of making them feel as helpless as you'd felt. But it didn't make me feel better. Did you expect it to? I thought it would. I thought seeing them face consequences would give me closure, would make the pain go away. Revenge rarely works that way. It might provide temporary satisfaction, but it doesn't heal the underlying wound. Only forgiveness can do that. I'm not ready to forgive them. That's okay. Forgiveness isn't something you can force. It's something that happens when you're ready, when you've processed the pain and anger and betrayal. Right now, you're still in the middle of that process. How long does it take? There's no timeline for healing. Some people forgive quickly, others take years. Some never forgive at all. The key is to focus on your own healing, not on what they did or what they deserve. I don't know how to do that. Start by focusing on what you want your life to look like going forward. Not what you're running from, but what you're running toward. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to build? That conversation changed everything for me. I'd been so focused on punishing them for destroying my old life that I'd forgotten to think about what I wanted my new life to look like. I'd been defined by their betrayal instead of by my own choices and values. I started small. I moved out of the hotel and into a new apartment, somewhere I'd never lived with Sarah, somewhere that didn't have memories of our marriage. I bought new furniture, new clothes, new everything. I wanted to start fresh, to build a life that was completely mine. I also started dating again, though tentatively. It was hard to trust people after what Sarah and Marcus had done. Hard to believe that someone could love me and be faithful to me. But Dr. Williams helped me understand that their betrayal was about their character, not about my worthiness of love. You can't control other people's choices, she said. You can only control your own. You can choose to trust again, to love again, to be vulnerable again. That's not naive, that's brave. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I met someone. Her name was Jessica, and she was a nurse at the VA hospital where I was receiving treatment for some minor injuries from my deployment. She was kind, funny, smart, and most importantly, she was honest. She knew about my divorce, about what had happened, and she didn't judge me for it. I've been cheated on too, she told me on our third date. I know what it feels like to have your world turned upside down by someone you trusted. But I also know that not everyone is like that. Some people are worth the risk. How do you know I'm worth the risk? Because you're here. Because you're trying to build something new instead of just wallowing in what you lost. Because you're brave enough to trust again, even after what happened to you. Our relationship developed slowly. I was careful not to rush into anything, not to use her as a rebound or a replacement for what I'd lost. She was patient with my trust issues, understanding about my need to take things slowly, supportive of my continued therapy sessions. A year after my divorce, Jessica and I moved in together. It wasn't the same as what I'd had with Sarah. It was better. It was built on honesty and trust and mutual respect, not on the kind of desperate need that had characterized my marriage. We were two whole people choosing to build a life together, not two broken people trying to fix each other. I never forgot about Sarah and Marcus, but I stopped defining myself by what they'd done to me. I stopped checking their social media, stopped asking mutual friends about their lives, stopped caring about whether they were happy or miserable. They became part of my past, not my present. 2 years after the divorce, I got a letter from Marcus. He'd found my address somehow, had written to apologize again, and to let me know that he'd been in therapy too, that he was working on becoming a better person. He didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't ask for friendship, just wanted me to know that he thought about what he'd done every day and that he was sorry. I read the letter once and then threw it away. Not out of anger, but out of indifference. His guilt was his to carry, not mine. His journey toward redemption was his to walk, not mine to validate. I'd moved on, and I didn't need his apologies to continue moving forward. 3 years after the divorce, Jessica and I got married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Nothing like the elaborate wedding Sarah and I had planned. But it was perfect because it was real, because it was built on truth and trust and love that had been tested and proven. During our wedding preparations, I thought about the engagement party where I'd served Sarah divorce papers. I thought about the satisfaction I'd felt in that moment, the sense of justice and revenge. But I also thought about the emptiness that had followed, the way that moment of triumph had turned into months of healing and rebuilding. I'd gotten my revenge, but it hadn't given me what I'd really wanted. It hadn't erased the betrayal, hadn't undone the damage, hadn't made me feel whole again. Only time and therapy and the love of a good woman had done that. On my wedding day, as I stood at the altar waiting for Jessica to walk down the aisle, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Not the temporary satisfaction of revenge, but the deep contentment that comes from building something real and lasting and true. I thought about the man I'd been when I discovered Sarah's affair. Angry, hurt, focused on destruction rather than creation. That man had needed revenge, had needed to see his betrayers punished. But the man I'd become didn't need that anymore. He'd found something better. A life built on his own choices, his own values, his own capacity for love and trust and forgiveness. When Jessica appeared at the back of the church, radiant in her simple white dress, I smiled with pure joy. This was what I'd been missing with Sarah. Not just fidelity or honesty, but the deep peace that comes from being with someone who chooses you every day. Someone who loves you not out of need or desperation, but out of genuine affection and respect. After the ceremony, during the reception, my best man, a buddy from the military who'd been deployed with me, stood up to give a speech. "I've known this man for 5 years," he said, "and I've watched him go through hell and come out the other side. He's faced betrayal and heartbreak and pain that would have broken a lesser man. But instead of letting it destroy him, he used it to become stronger, kinder, more capable of love. That's the kind of man you want in your foxhole, and that's the kind of man you want as your husband." I looked around the room at the faces of the people who'd supported me through the darkest period of my life. My parents who'd flown in from across the country. My sister who'd listened to me rage and cry and plan my revenge. My therapist who'd helped me find my way back to myself. My military buddies who'd understood the unique pain of being betrayed while deployed. And Jessica's family who'd welcomed me with open arms despite knowing my history. These were the people who mattered. These were the people who'd helped me rebuild my life, who'd stood by me during the healing process, who'd celebrated my victories and supported me through my setbacks. Sarah and Marcus had taken something from me, but these people had given me something better. The knowledge that I was worthy of love, that I was capable of trust, that I could build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. Later that night, as Jessica and I danced to our wedding song, she whispered in my ear, "Are you happy?" "Completely," I said and meant it. "No regrets?" "None," I said. "Everything that happened, all the pain and anger and revenge, it all led me here. To you, to this moment, to this life. I wouldn't change anything." And that was the truth. I wouldn't change the affair because it had shown me what I didn't want in a relationship. I wouldn't change my revenge because it had taught me that destruction doesn't lead to healing. I wouldn't change the pain because it had made me appreciate the joy I'd found with Jessica. I'd started this journey seeking justice, seeking revenge, seeking to make my betrayers pay for what they'd done to me. But I'd ended it with something much better. A life of my own choosing, built on my own values, filled with love and trust and hope for the future. That's the thing about revenge. It might give you temporary satisfaction, but it doesn't give you peace. Peace comes from letting go, from choosing to build rather than destroy, from focusing on your own happiness rather than others' misery. Sarah and Marcus had taken 4 years of my life, but they'd also given me something valuable. The knowledge that I was strong enough to survive betrayal, wise enough to learn from pain, and brave enough to love again. That was worth more than any revenge I could have planned. As I write this, 5 years have passed since that afternoon when I served divorce papers at an engagement party. Jessica and I have been married for 2 years, and we're expecting our first child. I have a good job, a beautiful home, friends who respect and support me. I have, in short, everything I thought I wanted when I was married to Sarah, but with the foundation of honesty and trust that makes it real. I don't know what happened to Sarah and Marcus. I don't know if they ever got back together, if they found happiness with other people, if they learned from their mistakes. I don't know, and more importantly, I don't care. Their story is theirs to write, their redemption is theirs to earn, their happiness is theirs to find. My story is mine, and it's a good one. It's a story of betrayal and pain, and revenge, yes, but it's also a story of healing and growth and second chances. It's a story of a man who lost everything he thought he wanted and found everything he actually needed. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you justice. Sometimes it gives you something better. The opportunity to become the person you were meant to be, to build the life you were meant to live, to find the love you were meant to have. That's what I found in the ashes of my marriage, in the aftermath of my revenge, in the long process of putting my life back together. I found myself, and I found Jessica, and I found peace. And that, I think, is the best revenge of all. Living well, loving fully, and being completely, utterly happy with the life you've built from the pieces of the life that was taken from you. The nuclear option had worked in a way. It had destroyed my old life completely, making room for something new and better to grow in its place. Sarah and Marcus had thought they were taking my future away from me, but they'd actually given me the chance to build a better one. For that, I suppose I should probably thank them, but I won't. Some things are better left unsaid, some bridges are better left burned, and some chapters are better left closed. I have a new story to write now, and it's going to be a beautiful one.